video, I'm going to explain the cognitive load theory and the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. Cognitive load theory explains the human cognitive processes. There are 5 principles of the cognitive load theory, the first being information storage. Massive amounts of information can be held in the long-term memory. The next principle is borrowing and reorganizing. This idea suggests that we learn from other people. Next is randomness as genesis, meaning in an absence of knowledge, guess, and then test your guesses. The next principle is narrow limits of change, which means in the working memory there is limited to enhance rather than inhibit learning. Finally, the last principle is environmental organizing and linking, which helps establish the correct response for each situation or when to use it in context. Within the architecture of the cognitive load theory, there is the working memory, which has limitations, long-term memory, which has massive amount of storage space, and schemas, which is the structures that organize the knowledge that you have learned. This is the process in which human cognition stores information. The 3 types of mental load are also an important part of the cognitive load theory. The first being intrinsic load, which has to do with the complexity of learning material and the number of interacting elements. The next is extraneous load, which is due to the way the materials are presented, not the difficulty. Finally, germane load is due to the learning process, also known as affective load. To summarize, the goal of instruction of the cognitive load theory is to present an appropriate amount of intrinsic load, meaning it's not too complicated, while minimizing the extraneous cognitive load, meaning the lesson has good instructional design, and finally, to maximize the resources available for learning. Next, I'm going to talk about the cognitive theory of multimedia learning, which is also referred to as CTML. CTML considers and expands on the cognitive load theory. There are 3 assumptions that drive the cognitive load theory, or the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. The first is dual channels. This means we process information through our eyes and our ears. The second is limited processing, which refers directly to the working memory's limited capacity. The third is active processing, which refers to the cognitively active learner when they are selecting, organizing, and integrating information. The cognitive theory of multimedia learning is based on 3 types of memory, which are sensory memories, such as our eyes and ears, the working memory, which again is very limited, even though a lot takes place during the working memory, and the long-term memory, which is our prior knowledge. Cognitive processing in the cognitive theory of multimedia learning is similar to cognitive load theory. CTML has extraneous processing, which is extraneous load, cognitive load in the cognitive load theory, which is the way information is presented. CTML has essential processing, which is based on how much the learner already knows, similar to intrinsic load. Finally, CTML has generative processing, which is the information left over after processing, like germane cognitive load. Lastly, I will talk to you about the goals of instruction according to CTML. They are to reduce the extraneous cognitive load, or get rid of the extra stuff, to manage the intrinsic load appropriately, meaning to make sure learning content is at the same level as the learner, and finally, to facilitate generative processing techniques or to use effective learning techniques, such as self-questioning. As you can see, the cognitive theory of multimedia learning is basically an expansion of the cognitive load theory. I hope you found this video helpful, and it's been a quick explanation of both of these theories. Thank you.